So I'm Sophie from Litter Free Dorset. So we're an organisation that work with a range of charities, individuals and organisations to reduce waste and litter across Dorset. So you might have heard of us, you might not have done, but that's okay. Today I'm going to be talking about lots of different things. I'm going to talk about behaviour change, consumption and our habits, and how maybe we can change our habits to ultimately reduce waste and help the world a little bit. So the title of my talk, Litter Ain't Sexy, is kind of come about because the word litter doesn't usually seem to get people excited in any sort of way. So sometimes when I'm talking about litter, I need to reframe it. So I need to start talking about other things which catch people's attention. So I can start having meaningful conversations and start to begin change. For example, the word pollution seems to get a lot more hits. Air pollution, plastic pollution, a lot of people are more concerned with this sort of thing. But the word litter is sometimes seen slightly differently. But ultimately, they're the same thing. So today, I'm going to talk a little bit about behaviour change. So when I'm designing campaigns for Litter Free Dorset, we work with loads of different techniques to hopefully change people's littering behaviour to ultimately reduce the pollution in Dorset. So 3 of the things we look at, number 1, stories. Generally, if people feel part of narratives, if they feel part of a story, we can take them on our journey and change their behaviour. I'll talk a little bit more in a minute about that. The other one is social norming, which is a phrase you might have heard if any of you are psychology students. And that really is just about, if everyone else is doing it, we're going to do it too. So we can see examples of that at the minute with mask wearing, for example. Because everyone else is doing it, we feel compelled to do it as well. And the third one I'm going to speak about is nudging. So encouraging and influencing people to take positive decisions. So to begin with, stories. So everyone has different reasons for doing things, and people have different motivations and values, and this is very true when it comes to litter. Some people might not drop litter because they're worried about harming the environment and impacting wildlife. Other people may not drop it because it looks gross, or maybe people are now more concerned with potential risks due to the pandemic. So people have different motivations. So I wanted to start by playing this film. It's just a quick 2-minute, but it kind of highlights why stories are so important when talking about pollution. So that little trailer is from Blue Planet 2. Some of you might have already seen Blue Planet. Some of you might have heard of the Blue Planet effect. So when that came out to the screens, it pushed the word plastic pollution to one of the most common words used for that year in 2018. And it really brought pollution into a different sort of cultural realm than we were used to before. So the power of stories really pushed the problem and made people consider how they could make changes. And the next example I'm going to talk about is social norming. I mentioned before, this is generally because everyone else is doing it. We all have this need to belong. That's why we tend to like being in groups. We like being with our families. We don't usually like to stand out too much. So my example here would be water bottles. So for years and years, environmental campaigners have been campaigning to stop people using plastic water bottles. But I think the most effective thing that's happened in the last few years is Love Island, because on Love Island, everyone had reusable water bottles, people were watching it, and you saw after then it became a little bit more fashionable to carry around a reusable water bottle. And because of that, numbers of people buying bottled water began to drop. Another thing that's happened in the last few months, obviously due to the pandemic, you've seen a lot more people working from home. So actually people are buying less water on the go. So hopefully this trend of people buying less water will continue, and it's a habit that will be instilled within our society. The next thing I want to talk about with behaviour change is nudge theory. So generally, we tend to be nudged all day. So this is usually electronically through our phones or through our emails. We have notifications usually a lot, which is pulling us in and making us look at things. This also happens when we're walking around the streets with advertising. So it's something that we're used to in the 21st century, and there are some dangers within that. But there's also lots of positive things we can use, and we can do positive nudging to influence and encourage people to take positive decisions. So I wanted to show you a video from an environmental charity called Hubbub, who we are constantly inspired by a Litter Free Dorset. It just shows you how all this behaviour change theory can be put into practice.
We have a 2 by numbers display where you put your chewed gum on a cross and it builds up the face of a character who is from the area. Hubub is an environmental charity who's looking at fresh, new, creative ways of communicating different environmental issues. Give people a reason to take care of the place they're in and help them understand the environment that they're in. This doesn't have to be boring, it can be fun and interesting, and that's what we're trying to do. Villiers Street is just one street in a massive city. We hope that this is going to be a model that can be replicated, and we will share the results of what is successful from this project. We want this to be a catalyst for greater change on a bigger scale across the country.
So we've spoken about behaviour change, and I've given you some examples of how that can be put into practice. But that's really about changing behaviour, littering behaviour. But something we also need to take into account is reducing litter at source. So what do I mean by that? Well, the first thing we need to think about is convenience and the society we live in. You can see there I've put, we all live in a life full of convenience, from takeaway to Netflix. So we can all think about times in our day where we may reach something to make our life a little bit easier, whether that's a sandwich in Tesco's, or whether it's quickly choosing something online to watch at the end of the day. The next thing I want to talk about is circular economy. So I'll come to that with a little diagram in a bit. And also at the end of that, just talking about curbing our consumption. So how can we ultimately reduce litter and waste? So food waste is something I wanted to focus on for convenience. Food waste is a real issue on our planet at the minute. You can take a look at some of the infographics on the right of the screen. But I think the most sort of staggering one to me is the fact that food loss and waste is responsible for 8% of our global greenhouse gas emissions. So that's actually 6 times more than global aviation. So quite often when we think of climate change, we think of flying around for our holidays, or maybe the business sector traveling all around the world to have their business meetings, when actually the food waste has quite a big impact on our climate, and it's something we need to start tackling. And the thing is with food waste, it's something we can all do on an individual level. We can all recycle our food waste. Dorset, we have the possibility to do that. If you don't recycle your food waste, it's a great thing to start doing, because it means that all that waste, whether it's your peelings or your banana skins, goes back into an anaerobic digester, and then that energy is used to power our homes. So it's really important we do that. And then the next thing I feel is important to mention is how we change into a circular economy. So not to get too boring and waste geeky, but a long time ago we were very much within a linear economy. So this meant we were making things, we were using them, and then they were going straight into landfill. So there wasn't any sort of recyclable possibilities there. Right now we're very much more in a reuse economy. So the raw materials are going into production, we're using it, and then part of that is going into recycling and back into production. So you might recycle a plastic water bottle, and then that is then put it back into production to create another plastic item. Or the other option is that it's non-recyclable waste, and that will be going to landfill. Here in Dorset, we actually send a lot of our stuff, it all gets separated off, and a lot of it gets sent to Europe to be burnt. And this is actually a form of recycling called energy for waste. So that means actually can be generated to power our homes and factories. So This is where we currently sit. However, where we need to move is more into a circular economy. And this is quite simple. Really, what we need to be doing is we need to be taking the raw materials, producing them into the things we need, using them for a long amount of time, and that includes your refilling and your reusing, and then recycle that back into more products. So we just need to move into a system which is creating zero waste. And we've got some challenges ahead of us, but we know how we can get there now. So it's an exciting time. But I just wanted to put that into kind of images. Some of the kind of companies in the UK that are actually already doing this circular economy. So, for example, there's lots of companies that are creating bags out of paddling pools and truck lorry sides and all those sorts of things. The items on the left, the sunglasses, the skateboard, the kayak, all these things are made out of recycled plastic. So the plastics, the waste plastics, are made into little pellets, and then those pellets are then melted down to create new products. And even like exercise clothing is also now being able to make out of plastic. So there's loads of possibilities, and there's lots of growth within this sector. So it's, like I said, a very exciting time. And the thought I just wanted to leave us on for this section is basically it is quite simple. To reduce waste, we need to reduce our consumption. So in order to reduce litter, we need to reduce our waste. And what we need to do is just reduce what we're buying, what we're eating. And that in turn helps the whole circular economy. I think it's important here to mention there's two things. So there's systemic change. So it's the changes which the manufacturers are making. And they're changes which sometimes you need the government to push on. And those big corporate companies which are producing a lot of things and maybe producing packaging which isn't environmentally friendly. But there's also individual change. So there's lots of things that we can do ourselves to make a difference. And that brings me on to habits. So what can we do? So what can you all you there on the other side of the screen, I can't see your lovely faces, but I know you're there. What can you do? So there's a few things I'm gonna speak through. So number one, choose to reuse. So whatever that item is, choose to reuse it. So the things we're more familiar with are water bottles, coffee cups, and masks. So I'll come on to maybe a few more different things that we haven't thought of as well. The next thing, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you not to drop litter. That's a very obvious thing to say, but I wanted to pick up on one thing which is a huge issue for marine plastics right now. It's cigarette butts. So whether you smoke, whether a friend smokes, whether a family member smokes, it's really important that we all get that message out there. Because cigarette butts are the biggest plastic polluter. They do not biodegrade, and they turn into microplastics, and they will be within our oceans for a long time yet. So that's something I'm going to come to. And then also 2-minute litter picks. If you haven't heard of the scheme before, I'll just talk a little bit more about that. So I wanted to show a little clip just about masks. I found this on Facebook, and I just thought it was it's quite a powerful little video. So I think the most important message to get from that video is what we all can do is reuse. You know, we can see loads of disposable masks out there in the minute, and the tragic thing is even if sometimes you put them in the bin, these can be pulled out by seagulls, and sometimes they can find their way out into the environment. So if you haven't got a reusable mask, go and purchase one, invest. You'll save a lot of money in the long run, and they're really funky. You can find lots of different patterns now. So arguably, yeah, they're a bit better looking than the disposable ones. Also, reusable cups. So they're really handy to take around, pop them in your bag, and really easy way to refill and reuse in order to reduce the amount of waste that you yourself are producing. So the next video I'm just going to show is more around plastic. So as we all know, plastic pollution is a real big issue. I showed you the Planet 2 video at the start. But these are just some different ways which you can go that little bit further, and how you can break up with plastic. So that's just a little film to show you how you can go that little bit further with single-use plastic, and really make some other changes within your life. They did mention straws within that one. And within this month, the government's actually banned straws. So cafes, restaurants, pubs, bars, they're no longer allowed to provide straws. They're completely banned, which is a great move forward for plastic pollution. And that's an example of systemic change. So something happening at a higher level, which means individuals don't even get the option of using them. So moving on to cigarette butts. So the main issue with cigarette butts is they can travel really far. So when they're dropped on the ground, they can go into drains, into rivers and sea, and ultimately harm wildlife that could easily mistake them for food. And this is having a real issue within the food chain. And I'm going to show you two images now, and I'm just going to ask you to have a little think about how you feel about either one of them. So the first one. So this is obviously an image of a lobster, and maybe you guys could pop in the chat potentially how you feel about this one, or just have a little think to yourself if you're in a group of students. And then the next image I'm going to show you is this one. So these images might give you slightly different feelings. They both got very different vibes to them, but I think the point that I'm trying to make with this is when we're doing campaigns, we want to make sure we're positive. Quite often, if people are given negative stuff to listen to, they generally turn off. And if it's something that's more positive, if it's funny, or if it's slightly risque, then people are more inclined to engage in it. So it's just a simple example of how we like to design our campaigns, making sure they're positive. Currently, we've got a campaign called Bin Your Butt, all around not dropping your cigarettes. One of the main things we're keen to do with our campaigns is having a clear call to action, so making sure that people have got things they can do to reduce the litter. So one of the big issues with cigarettes is you quite often don't have a bin near you or an ashtray when you're walking around. So we give out portable ashtrays to smokers. They're called stubby packs, and it's very easy to stub out your cigarette butt and pop it in the pouch. This means then when you find a bin, you can empty it out and then reuse your stubby pack. So I know I'm running out of time, so I'm going to whiz through this bit. But the last thing I wanted to talk about was the 2-minute litter picks. And you're probably aware of lots of people going out and helping clean up the beaches, which is absolutely fantastic. And I wanted to say that all this individual action, whether you're taking part in this already or not, is very welcomed. And I like this post on Instagram from Plastic Pollution Solution, because they just speak about how you don't have to look a certain way, you don't have to be a certain person, it doesn't matter what age you are. If you care about where you live, you can go out and pick up a few bits of litter. I mean, this girl on the left obviously picked up quite a bit more than a few bits of litter, but anything is a great help. So the quote I wanted to finish on is one that I think is really important in this, because it's not important how perfect we are. So we don't need a handful of people doing zero waste perfectly. We need millions of people doing it imperfectly. So we all need to get on board. We all need to do what we can. And that's the end of my presentation. So I don't know whether we have time for questions, but maybe Brian can let me know if there's any burning ones. Okie dokie. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed the presentation. And if you do want to get in touch about any projects or campaigns, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and the website is www.litterfreedorset.co.uk. Thank you.